Hey guys, and welcome to today's video. So in this one we're going to be covering off our review and our experience of Microsoft xCloud and how it is sort of late 2021. We've obviously done a lot of cloud gaming, and our previous kind of go-to ones have always been like GeForce Now and Google Stadia, which we've had some really good experience from. Microsoft xCloud up until this point has kind of been really hit and miss. However, things seem to have changed very recently and it's become a much more playable experience. So let's get on with the review and we'll tell you our thoughts, some of the bad things about it and some of the things that we really like about Microsoft xCloud. So it's pretty hard to argue that Microsoft Game Pass isn't good value. At the end of the day, if you are a gamer and if you have a PC, obviously an Xbox, then it's pretty much a no-brainer that you're going to want to get this service because it just offers so much in terms of value. The cloud gaming bit does become a harder buy if you don't already have that additional hardware. However, it's still a really good proposition. Compared to something like Google Stadia or Nvidia GeForce Now, you seem to get a lot more bang for your buck because there are so many games that come across to get xCloud, and especially on day one as well, so a lot of new releases do land on the service. There's also a lot of older games, and with Microsoft's acquisition of Bethesda, if you're into the RPG type games, there's a whole host of different games available for you to play. Basically, when you sign up to Game Pass Ultimate, you also get xCloud included, and now it's not invite only for anybody as well, so if you are using an iOS device or an Android device, you're going to be able to use the cloud gaming service on any of those devices. Obviously, at the end of the day, if you get all of these games but it's not a good service, then what's the point? And that's kind of where we've been at for the past few months with Microsoft xCloud. We've tried it on and off, and it's always been really hit and miss, and it's had a lot of latency issues and just kind of been a bit of an unplayable mess. And we've found that for a lot of people out there, some people have found that it works really well. A lot of people in the comments have talked about the fact that there's too much latency and it's still impossible to play. And some people have said that it's still not working great for them as well. So bear that in mind when we go through this review. Your own setup at home, how far away you are from the service, that's all going to have a massive effect on your experience. So let's talk about what we like about it, and that first thing is the library. There's just so much to play. There's pretty much something out there that's going to suit everybody's gaming style. We've had a blast recently playing things like Back 4 Blood. I've been playing Star Wars Battlefront, and it works so incredibly well. And just a few months ago, there was no way that I'd have been able to play a first-person shooter on Microsoft xCloud. It just wouldn't have been possible. Revisiting old games like Skyrim and playing it on my mobile phone is absolutely incredible. Then being able to pick up where I left off on my PC, and then if I got an Xbox, for example, I could throw that in the mix and do that as well. It's just such a great experience, and that library is something that is really hard to resist. Moving across onto the interface, and there's been a lot of things that have been updated with xCloud, and one of the big standouts to me anyway is the fact they've now got over 100 games that are supported for touch controls as well. It's not the ideal way to play at the end of the day, and you don't really get too much customization over those controls. However, it's nice to have, so that if you don't have a games controller that you can hook up to your iPad or to your phone, you'll be able to play quite a few of those titles and just use the touch controls as well. One thing that I really like about the touch controls is they do change depending on what's happening in the game. So when we're playing Dragon Quest, when you got to those sort of like cutscenes and stuff like that, or you were talking to different characters, it didn't have the whole user interface up on the screen at any given time. It'd switch out and it would change depending on what you're doing in the game. So if you don't have a controller to hand, you can still play a lot of games, and a lot of them work really well with some of those on-screen touch controls. Moving across onto the actual gameplay side of things, and that has improved astronomically. So recently Microsoft completed their move, so everything that's getting streamed to is getting streamed from custom Series X hardware, and that change shows massively. Load times are improved hugely, frames per second's been improved a massive amount as well, and the graphics look a lot better. The biggest thing that we've noticed though, because all of that looked pretty good beforehand and it wasn't a massive deal breaker for us, but previously latency was an issue and input lag was an absolute nightmare for us. So what was happening is we were getting these great graphics on screen, everything was getting streamed to us perfectly fine, but using a Bluetooth controller made playing xCloud absolutely impossible. And even when we hooked it up with something like the Razer Kishi, it was still pretty much an unplayable mess. First-person shooters were an absolute no-no. You could do turn-based RPGs, but even then there was a lot of slowdowns, and it was just not a great experience. Bear in mind we're based in the UK, so we are probably going to have more latency and stuff like that, so that's one thing to consider. But it was just an absolute nightmare, and it wasn't playable. As of about 3 weeks ago, when we picked the service up again, we have found it to be almost, not quite as good as Google Stadia. So if you've used Google Stadia in the past, you've probably found that it's a pretty silky smooth experience. If you've used GeForce Now, that's in our opinion just a little bit of a step down versus something like Stadia, and then xCloud's always been towards the bottom. xCloud seems to have caught up now with the likes of GeForce Now and almost Stadia as well, and the gameplay has been incredibly smooth. We've had almost no drop frames, we've almost had no input lag as well, and that's not just with a plug-in controller. I was really surprised. So we played Back 4 Blood and I was using the Backbone 1 controller. Obviously that plugs directly into the iPhone, so that we should have as minimal input lag as possible. And then I moved across onto the iPad expecting it to be a whole mess. However, once I hooked it up with a Bluetooth controller, it worked pretty much as well as using one of the controllers that physically plugs in. So they have done some tinkering in the background and it has improved massively. For the first time ever in our experience, xCloud right now is really playable and almost as good as the likes of Google Stadia. Now bear in mind that will vary from person to person, and this is where xCloud does fall apart just that little bit. It's not consistent. So for the most part, we are getting a really playable experience, but I would say that's about 90% of the time. 10% of the time, it just doesn't really work, and that kind of input lag returns and things just become a bit of an unplayable mess. Even when I have exactly the same setup, no other devices streaming, nothing at all has changed, it can just sometimes not be working. Now that could be that obviously it's still in beta, so they are still testing it and it might not have the server capacity and everything else in the background, but it is really frustrating because it's not something I experience on other cloud gaming platforms. So yeah, gameplay is improved massively and xCloud is just fantastic. I've had a blast playing on some of these different titles that I just wouldn't have been able to play previously. One thing to bear in mind, it's definitely the service out of all the cloud gaming services that is the most affected by other devices in my household. If I'm playing on Google Stadia or GeForce Now and my children watch something on Netflix, for example, I can still play those cloud games and they're not really impacted too much. If I'm playing on xCloud and somebody watches something on Netflix, xCloud just it just poops itself and it just absolutely stops working, and I get so much latency, I get so much input lag. So out of all three of what we'd call the major cloud gaming services, xCloud for whatever reason is massively affected by any other sort of bandwidth hogs in the household. So again, bear that in mind. If you're in a busy household, it might not work for you, and in fact for us it absolutely does not. Other things that we really like about xCloud is it's now available to stream on a PC as well. So previously it was pretty much just on a phone or a tablet, and Microsoft have been really pushing forward. So it's now baked into Windows 11, although we don't have Windows 11, but you can get it on Windows 10 as well. So that way if you don't want to download the games and you want to take all those benefits of cloud gaming, you can do so. I played a lot of Back 4 Blood on my PC. I didn't download it, I streamed it instead, and it was a really smooth experience. One thing that we definitely noticed is on the biggest screen there's a lot of compression and the graphics don't look anywhere near as good. So I would, again, out of GeForce Now, Google Stadia and xCloud, xCloud probably looks the worst, and it definitely seems to be a lot more compression than the other services. However, it's still a nice to have as they roll it out. It's also getting rolled out to older consoles as well, so if you have an older Xbox, you'll be able to start taking advantage of next-gen gameplay and next-gen titles as well, so that's something that's really worthwhile bearing in mind when making your decision. One area where they do let themselves down though is that compatibility. It's available on your tablets, your phones, obviously now PC as well, but currently getting it onto a TV is a lot harder unless of course you buy an Xbox. Microsoft are apparently working on game streaming sticks, and they're also working on getting TV compatibility, so that is something in the pipeline, but at the moment if you don't have an Xbox it does become a lot harder to get it onto the big screen TV. So that's kind of our xCloud experience in a nutshell. As of right now, it is the most playable it has ever been. So late 2021, we would absolutely recommend giving xCloud a try. It's one of the most exciting propositions, in our opinion anyway, out of all the cloud gaming services, because we get that library of games that I can play on our gaming PC. If we wanted to go all in and get an Xbox as well, then you're going to get those games and have that sort of cross-save and cross-compatibility across all the different devices. And then when you want to pick up and play on a mobile phone or a tablet, you'd be able to do it through the streaming. It works incredibly well right now. However, the big thing is consistency at the moment. If Microsoft can nail that consistency, then we will pretty much be all in on this service. At the moment, there are just those few times where it just doesn't work for whatever reason. It's nothing that we've done our end. And a lot of people have told us in the comments as well that they're still having those issues with Microsoft xCloud. A lot of input lag, a lot of latency. When we were having issues, other people were talking about how they didn't have issues. And again, it's just too hugely affected by everything else. So once they nail that down, Microsoft xCloud is an extremely exciting proposition. At the moment, if you're just a cloud gamer, it's probably going to be a little bit too expensive compared to some of the others, especially since they don't offer just a cloud gaming version of it. Microsoft have said and kind of mentioned and teased that it is something they're looking at in the future, but at the moment you have to sign up for that full Game Pass package, which is primarily focused for PC and also obviously Xboxes as well, and you get the cloud gaming thrown in on top of it. It'd be nice to see that change and then push forward in the future, but obviously we'll have to wait and see what happens. So right now, Microsoft xCloud is definitely worthwhile giving a try. You can get different trials and they always have some incredibly discounted deals out there as well. So if you haven't used xCloud and Game Pass already, it's worthwhile giving it a go. See how well it works for your setup, but at the end of the day, it's a massively good value proposition. It offers some great streaming experience when it's working, and ideally, if you can get a controller that plugs directly into your device rather than a Bluetooth controller, you're going to have a much more consistent gameplay experience. So yeah, it's a really exciting time for cloud gaming. Microsoft are massively pushing forward. They've made some huge improvements over just the last couple of months, so we're really excited to see what they do over the next sort of 6 to 12 months. Let us know in the comments what your experience of Microsoft xCloud has been. Have you been getting a good experience, or has it been a relatively poor experience? Has it changed like ours has? Obviously ours has gone from being really bad to really good right now. And if you aren't using xCloud, what game streaming service are you using? At the end of the day, you can't go wrong kind of dipping in and out of all the game streaming services. We do all the time because there's games that are available on different platforms, there's different experiences available on different platforms, and that's one of the great things about cloud gaming is that you have that flexibility to dip in and out of different services. You don't have to make that big upfront purchase, you just pay your monthly fee and yeah, enjoy whichever one you want to do. So I hope that video's helped you, and if it has, hit that like and subscribe button and come along for some more awesome content in the future. If you've got any questions or any comments, throw them down below and we'll do our best to respond to those, and we'll see you next time. Bye!